I wanted to do a different kind of drawing study this time. You might remember the quick character sketches I did recently, the blacksmith NPC in two different looks. I wasn't planning on taking those beyond the initial loose concepts. I treated them like quick studies designed to be finished within an hour. I was not really happy with the designs also. That was the original goal, rapid ideation and skill practice. However, as I looked back at my work from the past year, I realized I've left a lot of things unfinished. This year will not be remembered fondly. I struggled constantly, even with consistency, which is usually not an issue for me. Too many studies sit in my files, stranded in a state of rough sketch or loose line art. It's an easy trap to fall into, especially when you are focused on learning and building a visual library rather than on production. You prioritize volume over polish. You move on as soon as the core lesson of the study is learned. But I want to change that rhythm a little. I wanted to choose one piece, just one, and push it beyond the study phase. I wanted to not leave everything as an exercise. It's important to practice the full cycle of creation from initial idea and sketch to clean line art and finally to a polished finished piece. Even though I did not like the initial sketches, I cannot always go back and start a new one. This struggle with the unfinished work is something I think a lot of intermediate people like me face. When you're a beginner, simply getting the lines down or making the forms look right is the victory. When you become intermediate, you know how to finish a piece, but you often hesitate. Why is that? I sometimes think I'm just fooling myself saying I could do better, but I never do, so could I really? I think part of it is the sheer volume of things I still want to learn. Starting a new study, like a new plant, a new animal, or a new character pose, always feels more exciting and offers a quicker hit of learning than spending 5 more hours on rendering a single texture. That initial burst of creativity and problem solving, where you tackle the core challenge of a drawing, is thrilling. The rendering, the cleanup, the final polish, that's the discipline and the patience that maybe I often lack or choose to avoid. For me, starting a new project feels like a promise full of potential. Finishing one feels like closing a door, and sometimes the fear is that the result won't live up to the promise I saw in the initial sketch. It's a rush toward the new and a subtle avoidance of the hard, slow work of refinement. Another major problem is the difficulty in knowing when a piece is finished. This is especially true when I'm transitioning from just doing quick studies to creating full illustrations. Is it finished when the line art is clean? When the local colors are locked in? When every surface is rendered? Without external deadlines or a client's brief, that final call is often an internal battle. I think I risk rushing the ending because I get impatient, or conversely, I risk overworking it until the original life and energy of the sketch are lost. So for this study, I chose the more adventurous version of the blacksmith NPC. I called her an NPC, a background character, but she already has a bit more story potential than the simple blacksmith in the apron. She's rugged, she carries a weapon, and she looks ready for a journey. This felt like a character I could actually use in a future project, so it deserved the effort. And she can still be the blacksmith, so this was her second look. The first step was to take the loose sketch and turn it into a clean line art. This is where the patience comes in. In the original sketch, the lines were messy, overlapping, and suggestive. To create a finished piece, I needed to define the forms clearly. I spent time refining the face, making sure the armor straps made sense, and giving the weapon a solid, believable shape. Even though this character is meant to be a simple NPC, the details still mattered. The process of turning a rough sketch into clean line art is an exercise I don't really work on much. This stage transcends mere tracing. It necessitates a commitment to the design involving the crucial process of making definitive decisions on elements that were previously only loosely defined. For example, her face was just a few lines in the sketch. I had to give a little more thought to her face and expression. In the quick sketch, she was generic. In the line art, I tried to give her an innocent but determined look. Someone who has seen maybe a few battles, not that experienced, but is still ready for the road. The face is not the focal point, maybe for this full body illustration, but even for an NPC, it needs to communicate a hint of personality. Once the line art was complete, I moved into coloring. My goal was to push the piece up to the point where it becomes line independent, meaning the final color and rendering carry the form and the initial line work can be mostly hidden or dissolved into the painting. This process forces me to think beyond just line weight and focus on light, shadow, volume, and texture, all the elements that make an image feel real and complete. And I was thinking maybe I did not really need the line art, so I'm always torn between should I just go into painting every time I do a sketch, and I generally do. But I'm still glad I challenged myself for a line art practice this time. I used a simple color palette, earth browns and blues for her tunic and leather, that blue tone for her boots and gloves. I'm not sure if it's the right color for leather, but I kept the colors subdued, fitting for a traveling adventurer who would want to blend in with a snowy forest or a rugged landscape. She shouldn't be bright or distracting, but her hair was red, so no need to make everything brown or gray. I tried to block in the basic light source, deciding it would come from above and slightly to the right. I started using a slightly desaturated purple for the darkest areas, for the blue parts. This stage is the most crucial for pushing toward a finished look, and it is also the part that I start to get bored because it demands patience and control. You have to treat every surface, the rough texture of her tunic, the smooth sheen on her metal buckles, the worn look of her leather armor, the soft texture of the fur details. This is where I often rush. I want the texture to appear instantly, but good rendering takes layers, subtle shifts in value, and careful use of blending and texture brushes. I should have focused on making the symbols more detailed, for example, so that they would suggest a history or some kind of world building. But I'm trying to stay away from those things until I finish the species studies that I'm working on right now. Then I think I will work on things to create symbols from species, or since I really like the plant studies, maybe there will be cultures emphasizing those kinds of motifs. For the tunic, I tried to keep the folds soft and realistic, indicating the thickness of the fabric, but nothing is really realistic in my illustrations ever. As the rendering became stronger, I slowly started painting over the initial black lines. This is the line independent part of the process. I didn't raise the line art layer entirely at first, but I lowered its opacity and used color to paint onto and over the lines, particularly in areas where lights sit or where shadows define the edge. The line stops being a hard outline and becomes a subtle part of the form's edge definition, often taking on the color of the shadow or the light. And the last stage, I just got rid of all the line layers completely. The final touches included adding subtle highlights to the metal and leather. I used some textured brushes on her hair and fur details. I tried to adjust the overall values to ensure a strong contrast. I hope it reads well enough. In the end, the simple NPC sketch transformed into a fully rendered illustration is not a masterpiece, but it is a finished piece of work More importantly, the process itself was the reward. It reinforced that importance of patience, of seeing a project through, even when the initial excitement has faded. Now, this character feels ready. I can imagine her instantly in a world building context. Perhaps she's the one who will become a hero for the village later on. She is no longer just a post study, she is a tangible, usable character asset. So, studies are vital for learning, but finishing a piece is essential for learning the whole illustration making. I still struggle with rushing and the allure of the new, but making this commitment to not leave everything unfinished was a way to push myself and build the patience required to finish project like I dreamed I would be finishing. I hope this drawing finds a home in my growing world soon, and I hope to continue this pattern: rapid studies for learning and selective finishing for discipline. I hope I'll be back soon with more of my species studies, so see you in the next one.